Throughout the years, they repeatedly warned us not to come here. They dubbed it the quarantine world of the old transmission archives. Without communication, harvest, diplomacy, or conquest, the Empire would still exist. I was given the orders and the smug when I was appointed to fleet commander, but they didn't listen. They responded, "Make them bend the knee, their resources are ready for the takeover. Congratulations, you'll put Earth under our banner." I had some reservations, but in the Empire, you either follow orders or you disappear with 50,000 men, 30 warships, 2 dreadnoughts, and enough firepower to rob a planet of its bones, and at 0300 hours, we entered Earth's orbit. It appeared to be an open target with no planetary shields identified and no fleet resistance. My officers chuckled at our strength, saying it was a primitive planet. Won't last a day, and I briefly trusted them before the signals began to. Deep under the background noise, human signals appear as weak bursts on odd frequencies. Rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat, but we couldn't figure out the code or pattern. It wasn't our first landing party, 6 drop ships and 200 elite were involved. I wrote it off as a mistake. According to all readings, troops landed on the outskirts of what they named Chicago. At first, the city was half forgotten, with unstable electrical grids. After the stream cut off all 6 dropships and there was no signal, stillness seemed like victory. This time, I requested a second wave of strong assault units without beacons, simply black. They never even made it to the surface from the observation platform, aided by drones. Seen as, in a split second, an invisible force tore through the high atmosphere. The subsequent shredded whirling fireballs blasting across the transporters were undamaged. Fear swept around the fleet, wondering what the enemy's weapon number was. No weapon. Locke saw no projectile tracks, only an incomprehensible power, so I ordered the withdrawal. Using the normal technique, the heartbeat signal increased rapidly and was reassessed too late. All around the sector, communications from our long-range sensors went dark. Engines stopped working, and then we heard voices outside of our. I gritted my teeth and tried to shove, but you ignored my warning and are now prey. Despite the voice out, my second-in-command, who had served in a dozen conflicts, began. Security had to pull him away from the deck after he screamed and clawed at his own eyes until blood poured down his face. The team was dismantling men who had resisted plasma fire by deck. Now, vacuum storms were shivering and crying in corners, and outside the viewport Earth was silent, with no ships, missiles, or counterfleet. I finally realized that this was not a primitive world, but rather a pale blue one waiting for a trap. Earth was bait, and we had bitten hard. I pounded my fist. No easy conquest. Oppose the console's attempt to force a malfunctioning communication link to open and send a single, frantic message to the rest of the Empire. We are not stuck as we believed, come to Earth and repeat the signal. Cut, and I heard the voice once more in the utter silence. Now it starts speaking. Long after the signal disappeared, it started to reverberate in my head as the crew broke. Around me, officers are yelling contradictory commands, technicians are motionless in their chairs, and some of them are crying like kids. Others just stood looking blank-eyed, like puppets with their strings severed, so I made myself get up. Someone had to serve as a bridge officer with me in order to impose discipline into my limbs. Lock all access ports, barked secure this deck, and restart those engines. They rushed to comply, but the terror had already spread, so please give me anything you can. A red alert flashed on the central display bio beyond the bridge. Multiple contacts within the ship were discovered by signatures, making it improbable that we were in. They were in orbit even though no shuttles had docked or life support personnel had boarded. Distributing swift security squads to decks 6 through 9 while hopping between decks. Shouted, full combat readiness, but got no answer. I changed channels and only saw the deck commander's report. Whatever we were dealing with was already here, and I felt a knot of dread twist in my stomach. Drew my sidearm, a basic pulse pistol that is dependable for point-and-shoot but ineffective if. Lieutenant Kellen, one of the few people still thinking clearly, approached with a grim expression, "Your enemy isn't flesh and blood." I nearly laughed when I told the face commander that we should think about evacuation. Lieutenant gulped hard when you witnessed what happened to the drop ships and we couldn't even power the thrusters. What should we do? I couldn't think of a response that didn't seem insane. I turned to Dr. Vaughn, the science officer, a calculating, chilly man who wasn't giving. You read the transmissions, and he was pallid now, with a film of sweat on his brow. "What are we facing?" he replied. "You know the old warnings better than anyone." "Shook Commander, those warnings weren't a fabrication, according to the records, an autonomous planetary defense system of unknown provenance that is older than our." I narrowed my brows, wondering. "You mean an AI?" He violently shook his head. "Something older, something living, something artificial rather than mechanical," sent a shiver down my spine. Earth was cursed, according to the legends and whispers, not by machines or weaponry, but by something much more detrimental that was left over from whatever civilization once flourished here. The Empire rejected all of it as archaic, terrifying ghost stories, even if mankind had ever risen. My ship was being stalked by those ghosts when the deck was rocked by a violent explosion. I yelled, "Report!" as the emergency lights flickered and the alarm sounded. Before I could react to the main, I checked the reactor sublevels and the displays for engineering breaches and plasma escaping. The stars outside disappeared as the screen flickered, giving way to a pitch-black vacuum. Then a pale human or nearly human face. You were warned by the monster that stared through the screen with emaciated eyes like hollow pits. Its message vibrates deeply into our heads, and since you ignored it, you now belong to. Suddenly, the temperature on the bridge dropped, and frost started to build on the. Some of the younger officers shrieked when the console's breath froze the air. Fell dead on the spot, the face faded, the heart stopped cold, and the emptiness remained. Got a communication link to the fleet by forcing my voice to be steady. Now, he tried to manage the commander with trembling fingers, but. I turned to Vaughn because the jamming was getting worse, and you remarked, "This thing is alive." "How do?" "We fought it," but his face was somber that I doubt we can access the archives. "Describe how entire armies vanished here, their minds twisted into. Whatever this force is, debris is not constrained by the physical rules that we are familiar with." I refused to die on my knees, but I knew deep down that this wasn't the case. I tightened my fists. Another explosion, more warnings, a fight we could win by force. The screams did not break through the walls after one close Deck 7 ruptured.